Game begin. When the drum beats go like this.
Ja, det hade vi gjort.
Feedback round. First of all, Jonas Pettersson, welcome to the Rolling Bar. You look good, really good.
Thanks, the same.
And you just told me that you had the longest day of the year you're outside of Stockholm somewhere. Where are you?
Yeah, we're at our summer house at the moment, which is a bit south of Stockholm.
South of Stockholm.
And it's
oh my God.
very, very easy life. No water, but it's close to the sea. So
that's lovely. So it's so good. You're our first guest from Stockholm or Sweden, and I'm so grateful that you agreed to meet today. We haven't seen each other in a few years now, and we met on the jury of the Cannes Lions product design category that now they morphed into something else. And Cannes Lions started today as an online venture. And you know, if you should get bored out in your country home, you could always listen in. And I thought it would be a perfect idea to talk to you as an amazing product designer. Tell us something about your company, why you're called, how you found the name. Let's just start like that, so we get an introduction before we show some of your work.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I mean, the name was not very strategic or thought through when it was, if you can call it, created. But we were studying together in Sweden, and this was back 2004, so it was, I mean, pretty early to put your own web page. Today all students are doing their own web page and put up their work, but I think we were putting some joint projects up, and we just bought formaswithlove.se as a domain for some reason, which I can't remember now. But once we finished school, we decided to move on and start our own studio the same day, and we didn't have a better name than Formas with Love, so it was just to continue on that kind of portfolio that we created during study.
I think it's amazing. It's an amazing name, and you know, especially in times like these, where, you know, our countries are pretty open again, but I think love is more important than ever, and to be formed by love has always been very important. I will never forget how you and one of the other jurors from New York, you were trying on one of these big sweaters with, I would say, an Icelandic pattern or something, and your two heads were sticking out. And if that's okay with you, that's one of the photographs that I'm gonna show you.
I can't remember that. Was that during the jury?
That was during the jury, and it's one of my favorite photographs. Before we started.
Oh yeah, now I remember.
Before we started futzing around with the glow in the dark paint, remember we had stuff in your beards and the shoes, and everybody was glowing in the dark, and it was quite hilarious. And they told us not to spray the walls. So, well,
and obviously you had a camera there. Or...
Yeah, everything was there, and we had fun, and that's how we met. And I was very happy to be part of this jury because most of the people involved, including you, are product designers. What does a product designer do? I'm asking you to explain that to us because a lot of the people that are listening are architects, but clearly we are speccing and buying your furniture, and I think it's really important that people, if they don't, they definitely know some of your products, but I think it's so good to know one of the people behind it. So what is product design to you or to your company?
I mean, product design or industrial design, I think it's something in between culture and industry. So, I mean, on one side, we need to understand what's the needs out there. Of course, you can be a designer to base your work on your 100% your own experience and so on. But for us, it's really to observe and understand what's going on, what challenges are we facing in, you know, life at home or life at work. And then on the other side, having one foot in the industry to kind of find opportunities how to solve those problems in an industrial scale, which, I mean, you can be a designer to do one-offs or gallery pieces, and it has never really been our strength. So for us, it's really, you know, being in a factory is kind of one of the main important things to design, to make it sustainable and make it scalable and so on.
When I met you, and clearly we stayed in touch, which is really a nice thing. I tried to involve you in many projects, and I think this is because for the first time in my life, I had a little bit more time in the beginning of Corona, and that's why for the first time we can actually manage to get together and discuss things. You know, I wanted to bring you to Germany a couple of times for workshops to design products for the elderly, and I'm really more than ever, I think this is going to be one of our next challenges. More than ever, I still want to do that. But so for us, as a little warm-up, we are discussing you know, your work today, and when we met, you just came out with really beautiful acoustical panels. And I remember that at that time you were wondering how the office environments work in Germany, and I think, you know, with the new challenges, even if Corona is forgotten in a few weeks and a few months from now, I think that we will keep WebExing and we will keep, you know, having those kinds of talks and workshops like we do right now. Can you tell us something about your sound or noise control panels and what was the thought behind it many years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, when we started the kind of phase one or the beta version or the first prototypes, it was actually back in 2010. So that's a decade ago. And it was us moving into a new studio space in Stockholm, and it was, as many offices is today, like very open. And we realized, even if we're not a huge crowd, it's going to be quite noisy. So then we were starting to get interested in like what, usually when you have a problem yourself or you're hearing friends have a problem, that might also be a problem of other. So I think we were starting to dig into kind of the office market, like how does it look. At the same time, we came about the factory in Sweden doing this material. So we basically jumped into the car, drew down what we like a lot, going to like a factory tour, and realized that this material is made in many countries. It's made from wood, water, and cement. You have factories in Germany and in other Nordic countries and in the States and Asia. What
is the material? It's not felt?
No, it's wood cement boards. So it's I would say it was more linked to a building material, mainly used for acoustic properties, but less about aesthetic values. So I think we saw some kind of like an opportunity there. Like the material was good, it had these properties that we were looking for, but no one really made it as an interior product. So I think that was our maybe main contribution to see if we can actually tweak it and change it to be more relevant for schools or offices to solve the acoustic problem, which is still quite a low knowledge area. If you compare to light, for instance, where we now have quite a big understanding of how we create good landscapes or office environment with light, but acoustics is still quite an area to develop a lot further.
Acoustics is not an exact science, and you can simulate acoustics in a theater or in a school or an assembly place, but it's still more based on the knowledge of the designers, the theater designers or the acoustical designers, than it's based on anything that you can achieve with math, and I think that's really fascinating. I taught at RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and I do have a chair for acoustics in buildings, but it's really still more based on experience and on these simulation models than on an exact, it's not, you can't really, it's trial and error. So I think that your product is really important. And you also, as product designers, you always involve the latest tools. And I think, as far as I remember, you did a lot of three-dimensional shaping. I also saw you customized tiles the other day online. Tell us something about that.
About what? The
way you. I mean, sorry, I should ask a different question. How important are the tools that you have available in terms of your design?
I mean, if you take because it's as it is as acoustics, as you were saying, like it's of course the aesthetic value, which is one thing that you need to kind of tap into, and then you have a certain tools for that, which architects are quite used to. But still, it needs to be, I think, that user journey is as much part of the design work as designing the product today, because you can make a lovely product, but if it's not, understandable or easy to work with, you're not continuing, I think. And then the acoustic thing, if that was a question, I think it's super interesting. Now it's still very early, like how we see acoustics, but I hope it will be so much more developed to be, I would say, more flexible or adjustable depending on the needs in an environment. Because when you're in your home and you're just moving out your sofa, it changes the acoustics dramatically. Or if you are there by yourself and then you have a party, it changes dramatically because you have more people. So an environment is kind of flexible and changing more than ever, which is also changing the acoustics. But the acoustics are quite static as it is today. So
Well, I guess we all didn't have a lot of buddies around to absorb acoustics lately, to absorb sound.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about acoustics in a theater, you think about, first of all, the fabric, the stuff that's underneath the fabric of the seats. You think about the side walls and how perforated they are and what the material behind is. But you also do a body count. Carnegie Hall, and I worked on that. We were thinking 2,500 people in that room. You know, and they usually booked out. Okay, you know, we need less other acoustical measurements than we would usually need in a theater that's more empty. But before we only talk about acoustics, which is really an important topic that, you know, maybe we all thought about, but now it's becoming even more interesting. Tell us something about your design approach. You did a watch, you did a timepiece. You're doing your 3D lasering tiles. You're doing furniture. You're working on building materials. I mean, your website is so interesting because, you know, I discovered so many things that I'm absolutely intrigued with. Is it a different approach every single time? Do you work with how does it work?
I mean, I think time is something we talk quite much about in the studio, in the team, in the relation to whether we should do it, which is kind of the first thing. When you get a little bit more experience, then you realize that things, if you want to make things, innovation is a strong word, but something that is like hasn't been tried before. If you really want to improve something at its core, it takes time. So that's one aspect, that we need time to be able to do things that we believe in. And then the second part is like when you need to go into longer collaborations, which design is about, you also are in that mindset of, should we actually marry this person or this team? Because it's not going to be a 1 month or 6 months journey. We always see it as a 10-year journey. Even if the project might be just 2 or 3 years, which is still quite long, thinking about your life, we always think about products that needs to be like plus 10 years in the collaboration, because you improve things and you work on it after it's done as well. So we're quite, I think, on top of like talking about like what is the energy here? Is it worth going into this collaboration? And then time is a very important factor, which it was not as much, I think, when we were just finished school, because then you just start things because you want to make things move forward.
We all do almost everything in the beginning and become a little bit more picky as we realize time isn't endless. And I think that your approach is really very interesting. I think that not too many architects, you know, we are married for 15 years after the building is done. In terms of being reliable in court for it, so it's quite a marriage, you know. And I'm married to quite a few people, and you know that's just a risk you take in life. But was the feeling? I know that Sweden dealt quite differently, much more liberal with the Corona time. Do you have the feeling that you guys are going to be even more picky with your time? That you realize even more how you know what a big asset time is? Do you think that changed something?
I mean, we are in that transition or journey even before Corona, that we are kind of constantly discussing. Is it possible to do less with more impact? It's kind of the ongoing thing. We're not a huge team, but we're 12 people. And how can would it be possible for us to do just 1 project per year? Probably not, but we can do even less than we're doing today. And I think we're still doing quite little. It's not like we're designing 100 products per year. It's quite few. But the ones we're working on it's really in depth, and also with people and companies that are willing to invest in depth for that, because that's not always the case. Because we can easily just sketch on new ideas. That's kind of, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's just a small piece of what we're actually doing, coming up with ideas. But then how to kind of implement them to make them work, that's the hard part, I would say.
Also, I mean, getting in touch with product design. After I taught product design at RPI, even more with you guys in a couple of juries at Cannes Lions and IF design and so on. I think that people don't realize how much thought goes into, every inch or every millimeter of your design, and that it has to be ergonomically perfect if it's a chair, and the watch has to be in time, and the tiles have to be super precise and serial original, or there's a lot of challenges that you have to think through. So do you have the feeling that these challenges might become even more complex now? I mean, I don't want to write the Corona thing forever, but clearly it has been an accelerator for new thought and for new challenges. And the question just being, and I'm sure you have been approached in the last few months, what do you have any predictions? Even without the clients asking for new stuff, do you have predictions?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, if the question is if it's going to be more complex, then absolutely. And it's not like complex in the way what you see. I think that's going to be one of the challenges. How can we make things really, really straightforward, understandable, convenient for people? But what's made behind it is the complex. And I think for us, it's just becoming that brings more to our profession. Because if you just, okay, let's do another share, which is usually do we need another share conversation? It's hard to make a share just to share. But to make a share that is, made from a material that has never been tried before, or taking responsibility, how that share might go back to the loop. How would you design that business model? Then you add up so much more complexity. For the customer, it might look like the same share in the end, but it's two completely different starting points and completely different journeys. And not everyone is willing to do that journey. But if you are, then it's going to be, I think, much more interesting, because it's much more challenging.
And I think that you guys really, really go for challenges. I think that's something that triggers you. And just thinking about that, making interfaces even simpler or easier, or like a no-brainer, using materials that you can recycle or use, or I think that the world took a turn to understand, in almost in all different categories of the society. I think people understand more the need of products like that, I
mean, a certain part at least. Some, of course, you will have a group of people that would choose from an aesthetic value. But I think the majority of the population would still choose from basic needs of convenience and price. And if you really want to make a change, I think you need to tap into that market and really not only designing aesthetics, but actually designing things that becomes more convenient and easy for people. If you want to change a wasteful consumption, for instance. And I think designers are both, I assume, architects as well, but product designers are quite well suited for doing that job, to being part of that process and bring people together with different expertise to
I think your job is just as complex as the one of an architect, because we need to talk to a structural engineer and a climate designer and so on, but you have an interface and maybe electronics involved. And I mean, you have within one small product that has to be so precise and so neat, and so every detail has to be perfect. You have to be quite a stickler actually for details. We can always just say, okay, bathroom there, and and let's carry on the good work. No, I'm just saying I really think that industrial designers or product designers have to be super precise. And I don't know all the personalities involved in your team, but I've met you, and I think that you're very precise with the things you do, and I think that's a really good trait to have. So when you think about, thanks for sharing the idea of when we talked about time and time short, and maybe we should do less and make even more impact with that. How do you see your personal life? And I'm not saying your personal life with your family, but I'm saying your work-life balance in the future. And are you going to be more in the country and come up with ideas there, or are you going to have even more team meetings and you can't wait to all be back in the office? What is your guys' idea about that? How your work is going to change?
It was pretty, even if Sweden was not as, tough on the restrictions, was more like recommendation, but we changed from 1 week to the other. Everyone was working from home. The studio was used mainly for prototyping, so it was basically one person who was at the office at the time. And I think the first weeks was really, really interesting. If we take aside that this was a huge problem and a huge crisis for the people that had this, that had the corona. But I think from the work perspective, I think we face it quite interesting to change. I think we just learned a lot from things we said for a long time, that we should work more from different locations and so on. But it's harder to change it because you have your routines. And now we had to change, and we have to find solutions how to make it work. Because I think for us it was also like, are we now getting fewer? Are we getting more, airy in our schedules? But for us it has been really, really hectic during these months. So it was quite challenging to be on different locations, but still delivering work together with our partners.
Same here. It's like there's no break in the day, and even if you used to take a long lunch break and talk to your team, or do whatever, it's just spent in the evening, because the breaks are just not happening anymore. That's really taking a lot of the brain activity, that you're not really. You can do these kind of meetings or many, like 10 a day, but before it was less meetings. So but we definitely learn and like what kind of meetings is good to do physically, and what meetings are good in doing, like we're doing right now. For sure, we would fly less. We would spend less time traveling, and I don't think it will affect the quality that much. No, I hope that we're gonna have more meaningful meetings. That's what my hope is. I have one question for you. That's another tough one, and I'm not gonna ask you where the future is gonna go in general. But Germany, for example, is well known for German engineering. Sweden is known for their amazing design. How do you come that? How do you think? Besides from amazing Swedish designers in the past, but how do you think that came about? Why do you think that is?
I mean, you can ask that question to someone that is knowing their history perfectly, and you would have probably a better answer. But I'm just guessing now that I think as a democratic country could be one reason. Like you have a free education, which you have in many, of course, countries, but you have the opportunity to study something like design early on. So more people from different backgrounds are studying this creative profession. Then I think one maybe reason is kind of early on there was a merge between industry and then it was art quite early on, like how artists could collaborate with the industry. And then if you have a few companies that are succeeding, like you have in Germany, obviously a lot, then of course that is also a proof of that this is a good kind of investment, or what you would call it, like working with design.
We have Braun, we have Miele, we have many companies.
Yeah.
And I think it started after the war. But I mean, when I watch Sweden, I mean, even your king and queen. I mean, everything is way more designing than. I mean, we don't have
knowledge.
We don't have Louis II anymore. He built quite a few castles, but they were a little bit retro.
Yeah, I'm not super into the royal thing, but
well, I don't
know. I don't know if it also has something with climate, maybe. Like you have different seasons, and you need to plan a bit for like what's going to happen during the winter. You do that in the summer, and you take your time to do some proper things that will last also during those different seasons, which could be a bit different if you are in the south of Europe, maybe. I'm just guessing
south
again.
Of France. No, but I think you have a point, because the lockup has been one thing, but now the feeling that the summer is arriving here and being locked up still, or it's like everybody is getting ready again and is getting antsy, and so maybe you guys are even more used to that because you have your dark winters and stuff. So. Well,
but I'm not. I mean, it's yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just like also like different. You can recognize still some aesthetic language from the Scandinavian countries, and that may be why we see it's recognizable, because it's a small part of the world, and you can recognize still that it comes from here, maybe. But
it's a small part maybe, but you guys make a huge impact in the design world, and congratulations to that. And well, on a more personal level, I was so happy to meet you, because you're such a kind, sweet person, and I love you ever since we met at Cannes Lions. And I think that also that kind of modesty that's behind your guys' work. I mean, you have such an impact, and Formers with Love, I adore the name. I think love and taking care of each other and making products that help better the world. This is something that I see behind your work from the outside, so you don't have to blush or anything. It's me saying it, and that's why I'm very proud to know you, and so proud that you're talking to us today. My wish for this would be that you tell us which projects we should share, so people don't just listen to our discussion, but also recognize some of your work, because clearly they will recognize it, and so you pick and choose. We have no rush, but think about it. And is there anything you wanna say to the product designer in industrial design students of the future?
That was a big questions. I mean, sometimes when I meet students, actually they study industrial design, but I don't know if it depends on which school, but they are more leaning towards like service. I feel like maybe products is not really where we should go, but I feel like service and those other areas around is of course part of products, but to do a real impact, I think products is really where we need a lot of brain power in the future, because I think it's an utopic that we will stop with physical products. So I think learning how to make them better and kind of coexist with the needs or the challenges of the future, I think it's just super important to just see it as not designing more products, but designing better things that have tap into new business models that can be recycled and reused and so on. So it's a very, very interesting profession, I think, in the future.
I think so too. I think it is one of the very important professions of the future, because no matter if it's artificial intelligence or whatever, we always need an interface. We always need we call it Gestalt, and so we have all the hopes for you. And thank you so much for this wonderful, closure of our talk. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you usually don't do that so much anymore because you've done too much of it already. And in terms of making more impact, no, you should use your time wisely. And thank you so much that you spend it with us. And thank you from everybody who's watched. Stay online. We're gonna discuss what we're gonna show. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Auf Wiedersehen. Ciao.
This is Forgo. 2 years ago, we got to work on an idea. We wanted to find out if personal care could be more sustainable with less. Starting with this, a bottle of liquid soap. It's around 80% water, an ingredient you may already have. Imagine getting the bare essentials you actually need instead. So a box of 100 bottles would go from a big transport footprint to a smaller one. We wouldn't need to throw away plastic bottles and bags anymore. Just the easily recyclable paper packaging. And refills would be conveniently delivered to you when you need them. That's what we've done at Forgo. We partnered up with the design studio Form Us With Love and a lab specialized in natural cosmetics to develop a product down to the essentials. In just a minute, it becomes a full bottle of foaming hand wash. This is how it works. Sustainability touches all aspects of what we do, from our recycled paper packaging to our fragrances distilled from the leftovers of organic citrus farms and certified lumber yards. For us, hand wash is just the beginning. We're here to make all personal care more sustainable with less.
We're here in the deep forest of Småland, Sweden, to experiment with the latest BAUX product. We call it BAUX acoustic panels. The new BAUX acoustic panels is made for large or small spaces. It can be used in public spaces, offices, or other facilities. We have decided to experiment and build a gigantic wall to show you what you can do with the latest product from BAUX. BAUX acoustic panels is made out of wood, water, and cement. By collecting the wood close to the factory, we can minimize the environmental effects.
Okay.
Hi to Berlin. Hi, Nico. Hi, Rico. Nice names.
You know what? I'm not Nico. I'm Nick. But
Okay, then
first one now, combination.
maybe I was just rhyming, you know, because I have too much time on my hand.
Yeah, but it happens all the time. Yeah.
So, Nick, you're a professor at the Pasadena School of Design, RICO, and I'm gonna, mix that up a couple of times, but I'm sure you don't mind.
Young item. We're used to that.
You guys are partner at the Craft BRANDLAB, and you're, I've known this company for quite a few years and also worked with them. And I just wanted you to introduce yourself, what brought you to the company and what your different goals are, because I think you're a fabulous combination that we should watch in the future. Nick, do you want to start?
Sure. Yes, I can start. So way back when the earth cooled, I studied in Berlin visual communication at UDK, and after doing that, I specialized in exhibition design, both in the cultural realm and also in the commercial realm. And my first jobs out of school were working for various agencies. I was very fortunate that I got to work for very big clients at a very young age. I mean, Apple Computer, its first foray into Europe back then. I got to design like the big exhibition booths, and I really got to play and experiment, but on a very big scale. I worked in the south of Germany for a while, near Stuttgart and Ludwigsburg, as a creative director, and then
that's why you understand us down here.
Exactly. Yeah, I learned Spain. And then I must confess that my wife back then said, "Well, it's either me or Stuttgart." So that made us move back to Berlin. In Berlin, I started to study architecture for a very brief period, because then I got to meet the founder of Triad Berlin. And Triad Berlin back then was just an idea of a Projektgesellschaft, very, very ambitious, very high goals of doing big self-initiated cultural exhibitions. And I was person number 3 who walked into that office, and a couple of weeks later, I went to my professor, Herr Liebeskind, and said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't study with you anymore, because now I have a job that I really take seriously." And that gave me the opportunity to really help build Triad from scratch as their first designer and creative into a fairly fast-growing company that first did the Dream of Visions as a big public exhibition, cultural exhibition, and then did expo projects like Expo 2000 for Bertelsmann and Expo 2 in Switzerland, and so on and so on.
And when did you join Pasadena?
In 2004. In 2004, I got a phone call after I had done a small workshop in Pasadena, and this phone call was, "We have a job here, a job position open, and we think you should apply for that." And that opening was being the professor and department chair for graphic design, which is the second largest major at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And I got the job, and all of a sudden I had a faculty of 50 professors and over 300 students, and a very solid but kind of conservative graphic design program. And over the course of the years, I turned this rather conservative graphic design program into something that we call transmedia design. So our students are now able to really design and create concepts around all different touch points between 2D, 3D, and time-based 4D work. And this job I did during a time of 14 years, so until 2018, when I came back to Berlin. And in the meantime, while I was in LA, I also started a small satellite studio here in Berlin, where we send arts and culture design students in small transdisciplinary teams to Berlin, to the Hauptstadt here, to work and to study for 3 months in a row, for 1 term each, which gives them a tremendous experience of something that's completely different from LA, but yet also in different ways a little bit similar.
Well, we will discuss some of the work that you did in the last term with your students, which I think is a very important topic, especially in the times we live in right now. It's about the future of traveling, as far as I understood, but you went much further. So, Rico, tell us about your life.
About my life, oh my God. Well, let me maybe tell you this much. I studied business administration and have a background in international marketing and international management. And I studied in Germany and in France. And later, after my studies, I started working at Meta Design in 2003. I learned everything about branding and brand management and brand identity at Meta Design, because I stayed there for 10 years. I started as an intern and I left as a head of unit in 2013. And during that time, I just met a lot of great people who I still work with today. One of the colleagues here at BRANDLAB, I also know from Meta Design. So this is quite nice. And then I went in 2013 to the client side and I started working as head of marketing and sales for an insurance company. And I did that for 3 years. And then I decided it's a good time to go back on the agency side. And I joined a WPP agency in Hamburg, where I was managing director. And after 4 years, last year, just before Christmas, Linda called me and she was asking me whether I would be interested in taking over her position here at BRANDLAB and become partner at BRANDLAB as well. And I thought about it for a while, and it sounded to me very appealing. But like I said, I have this background in business administration. I'm not an architect. I'm not a designer. And so I said, well, I don't know whether this is a perfect fit because I can't be a good sparring partner probably for all your great creatives. And that's when I met Nick, and then we spent an evening together and had dinner together, and we thought about how would it feel to do it together. Me responsible for the business side, Nick responsible for the creative side. And I think on that evening in January 2020, he said, okay, it's either both of us or it won't happen. So that's how it all started. And
I think that's perfect. And I think we should get our viewers into the boat. We will show some of your work before we even start talking. And I will do a little introduction, because a lot of times, you know, we talk and then in the end we show the work. And I think it's very hard to understand what you guys are doing. I've worked with Triad, I've worked with Meta Design. I know where you're coming from. And I'm also familiar with your work. Tell me in a few brief sentences, what exactly does your BRANDLAB do? What is the work that you're gonna crank out?
You want to start?
I could start out, yes. BRANDLAB was initially conceived as a complement to Craft Architects. So Craft Architects, very well known for very large-scale projects, always very future-minded architecture, but also work in the social responsibility realm for social housing and everything that binds craft labs architecture together is this future-forward approach. I, by the way, met them when they started out in Los Angeles, and you know, we were like between the beach and all the California spirit that is still within the group of these architects. So that very much resonates with me. And the complement between the architecture that Graph does and what we do as BRANDLAB is really the extension of architecture towards brands. So a very, very holistic approach of trying to conceive strategically, but also in the execution, every possible touch point between a brand and its audience and their stakeholders.
Yeah. I mean, sorry if I interrupt. I mean, I think one of the questions that I asked you before, could I hire you as well? Or you said it started as something that together with Graph. But are you an independent agency that would support the Grafties, but also other architects and other people that need media architecture in general?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we do. So the answer to your question is yes, you could hire us as well, because we have a good practice in also working with other architects on other projects. So we are not exclusively bound to Craft, but of course, the goal is to combine our strengths and to look together and to extend our Wertschöpfungskette, our value chain, to the left side and to the right side, in order that we support Craft from a strategic viewpoint and from a branding viewpoint, and Craft supports us from an architectural standpoint. So this is the whole idea behind, and then Nick comes in with his experience in media architecture to complement the picture.
So let's go in medias res. So now we know that you're an agency, you're a free agent, just it's two of you. And of course, I knew Linda before. How would you define media texture? There is a lot of scenographers out there. We had Ate Brückner, and clearly we had the Grafties as well on our talk. And now we have you. So what is your approach to media texture? How are you different from other people that do media texture? Nick, maybe you want to tell us something about it, as we're the creative head, and make us understand what the specific approach of your company is.
Yes. So I personally would define media texture as using digital media in a spatial context. That means we're working with ambient media, very innovative, dynamic materials. And the goal is to dissolve the boundaries between the digital and the physical. There is this horrible term. We hope to invent a new term, phygital. I always get like goosebumps when I hear that. Bad ones. I
get fidgety when I hear it.
but seriously, I believe that we're in the next digital revolution. If we say, okay, the first digital revolution is the tendency of getting all the little and big screens around us, like from our iPhones to all our computer screens and all of that. The next digital revolution will liberate the digital content from all these screens, and will disperse them in our environment in much more human scale ways that becomes much more intuitive. And at a certain point in time, you will not ask yourself anymore, is this what I'm experiencing right now digital or is it physical? It will be dispersed and it will be intuitive. And we will not have to conform anymore as people to our media devices, but the media devices, as they get dissolved, will conform to us and to our needs.
So Rico, you being the head of the marketing department, and clearly you guys work closely together. You know, Corona seems to be almost over in Germany, and I'm saying it in a very, very cynical way, because it's clearly not, right? But I mean, the pressure was so big to get out again and meet people and get the economies rocking again, that, you know, they just finally said, okay, be self-responsible and get cranking again. How do you think can we, I mean, I hope that really good stuff comes out of this time, and I'm super convinced, because I always see the positive side. And as long as we all stay safe and healthy, how do you think this time helped promoting the more three-dimensional world, the digitalization of the world?
Well, there are actually two questions in there. You said, okay, how did it help to promote the 3D dimension, but also the digitalization? I think
4D, 5D.
I mean, the digitalization clearly, this pandemic helped a lot. Every one of us, not only in the business but also in private life, to digitalize ourselves in a very short amount of time. And I mean, just the way we entered this company was everything but usual. I mean, just imagine that you are stepping into a company as new managing directors in a phase where no one is there. So when we came here on April 15th, we were the only ones in the office. We were sitting in this room trying to get familiar, to figure out how the coffee machine and the copy machine would work. And we met all of the people in the office here on Zoom meetings at first. So we did that for a few weeks, and then we had like one-on-one meetings where we first met face-to-face, and then slowly but gradually people started coming back only at the beginning of May. So that was kind of a strange feeling, but also with all the clients. I mean, we have huge client projects going on, several of them, and everything that we do and all the meetings and all the introductions we had to very important clients took place in the digital world, and it worked out very good. And I think it all helped us, and it will help us in the future to continue working like this. And maybe it will make us think twice before we enter a plane and fly somewhere for a 2-hour meeting, because we now know it also works via all these wonderful online tools. And so I think it will have an effect, a long-term effect, and I hope it will also.
The only sense that we're losing is the sense of smell, not through Corona, but because we see everybody on the screen. And I always wonder, you know, because we also met a lot of new people only via screen, and I always wonder how we will like each other afterwards. But I have the feeling that the meetings are much more structured and down to the point. And I also have to say I really appreciate it. And it's going to be hard to go back.
I'm also, I would like to add one more sentence. I also think that relationships became a little bit more distant through the wire, but on the other hand, they became more close because we suddenly had the opportunity to enter very private environments of our clients, for example. I mean, I know so many living rooms that I have, or kitchens that I have seen in the last month, and I would have never seen them if we weren't forced to communicate via these wonderful online tools.
Yeah, look at all the rock stars, and they were all down in the basement for the big global citizen concert, and they were sitting in the darkest basements and whatever, and only a few people had a really stylish Hollywood house. But I really felt for them. I thought, like, hey, money doesn't, you know, buy you everything, you know.
Yeah. To follow up on RICO, and to put on my California cap for a second, you could say that relationships have become more mindful, both in the digital realm as in the physical realm. So the physical encounter has become more precious, because when you meet someone in person, you cherish this much more than you did before. And in the digital realm, just as Rico said, yeah, you see people in a context that you would normally not see them. And I personally, I must say, I get freaked out by these stupid masks so badly that I'd rather meet someone without mask on the screen than in reality with a mask. But that's just me. But
exactly.
Yeah.
I have that leads me to the next point, and I totally agree with you on the masks. I mean, I am wearing them when I go outside, but it's much better not to even go outside. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought about asking you about your project at Travelier that you did with your students, because I think traveling will change a lot. We saw the spooked out people sitting on the first plane to Mallorca yesterday, but missing their holiday homes. So because we only have half an hour, tell us in a few brief sentences what this project is about and what you found out. And then, Rico, I would ask you about the project you did with Craft, the Veloport, and you know, that future development, because I think they're both really interesting topics or projects that lead us to the future. So Nick first, I'm having the interview hat on today.
Okay, we can come to that. Yeah, the project you're referring to by Art Center College of Design was a 90-day project with a group of 12 students from very different majors, from graphic design, product design, interaction design, illustration, who all came from Los Angeles over to Berlin at Bikini Berlin, where we have our small studio. It was called Travelism, which is like the mission, a mix-up between, mashup between tourism and adventurism, you could say. And it was actually sponsored by Visit Berlin, the destination management organization of Berlin, and the destination management organization of New York and Company. So New York and Company and Visit Berlin, and imagine that, only a couple months ago in November gave us a briefing where they said, we want you to tackle the issue of over-tourism. So that sounds totally ridiculous nowadays, over-tourism, but it had built up to a real problem where destinations just get destroyed by the onslaught of pretty mindless masses of tourism. And on the other hand, there's a great economic dependency of virtually any destination in the world now, as you can see when when tourism stops all of a sudden. So Traveleering was the idea of using the students as a lens and a representative of a great group of international millennial students from different places of the world with different lenses to look at tourism and to look at how tourism can be reformed and how tourists can be incentivized and hosts can be incentivized to create a better experience for everyone involved. Better for the destination, better for the locals, and most importantly, better for the visitors. We came up with a manifesto, the Traveleers Manifesto, and that has about 10 points, 10 tenets in this manifesto for a better tourism experience. And it all has to do with being more mindful, being more open-minded, looking off the beaten tracks, don't have that experience of instant gratification everywhere, and so on and so on. And we presented the ideas 6 weeks into the project after we were in New York to do research in New York, and the students then lived in Berlin. And we did that at the midterm, and it was the last evening presentation in the whole city of Berlin where we got to present this. This was basically a day before Corona lockdown took place in Germany. And so, I mean, first we thought, okay, now we're fucked. This is totally irrelevant, this topic, because we addressed a completely different question. But it's actually not true, because a greater quality in tourism is going to be much more relevant than ever now that tourism slowly restarts. And as Rico said before, people think twice before entering a plane to go to another destination. So I just presented it to New York and to Berlin, to the CEOs of the destination management organizations, and both of them are absolutely thrilled with our findings, and they will actively use this Traveleering Manifesto now as they build back better, to use the term that was used at the current TED conference, to build back better tourism in both of these two cities.
And I think that would be really a big challenge, because, you know, if we all just go out there again, and some friends in Austria told me the other day that the highways were blocked on the way to Croatia, and, you know, everybody's finding their way out again as soon as the frontiers opened up, which in Germany was yesterday. So, you know, yeah, we will change the way we travel, hopefully, and travel greener and more sustainable, and maybe not 30 times a year, but only will only use very specific things that we want to do. So yeah, this time made us thinking, and I already tried to share a few of your slides, but we're going to share some more. So RICO, a very real project. There's already a prototype that you did with Kraft. Tell us something about the Veloport, if I say it right.
Voloport.
Voloport, of course. Not bicycles, planes.
No,
what am I thinking?
Well, it's been a very interesting project and a very future oriented project that we did there. What we want to do as an agency is we want to create or design the relationship between groundbreaking technology and being human. And what do we mean with groundbreaking technology? And we think that Volocopter is a perfect example of groundbreaking technology, because if you think and if you look back, people have always been dreaming and fantasizing about flying cars, and already 50 or 60 years ago, when Nick was a little boy, he was dreaming of little flying cars, and now we actually, with this project, we do have the chance to really make this tangible and to create urban air mobility, and it will be a reality in the very foreseeable future. And we think that this project just triggers so many emotions that it created a huge media buzz, and maybe you have seen that we have won 3 awards for it, and we asked ourselves, what is it? Why is it triggering these emotions? And I think I just have given you the explanation. That's at least the reasoning we came up with. However, I think that the groundbreaking technology is not the only thing. We need to create true customer experiences. So the entire customer journey needs to be designed, and it needs to create positive anticipations and migrate fears, for example, to be socially acceptable as well. And that means what we are looking at doing now, besides building this prototype of the Voloport, is to design this whole customer journey and to also design the brand of Volocopter even more. And so we have a whole team of strategists, architects, and designers who are working on this seamless brand experience that we would like to offer for Volocopter clients in the future. So it's still way to go, even after the prototype was presented to the world. And hopefully there will be more Voloports coming in the future, but also the whole setup around it, around the experience will be created and defined even further.
I think it will definitely come. I think we're gonna fly around with drones and have airports for that, and especially when they lock down Berlin airports, you know, during Corona, without us realizing it. Yeah. And I already miss it.
Yeah, but the truth is also, and we need to be realistic. So the first urban air mobility concepts will probably take off in Asia, not in Europe. I mean, we just know how regulated these environments are. So I think Asia will be first to pick it up, and then we will see how it will migrate to Europe and other places in the world.
But I think it's amazing that also what Nick said before, that the interface won't have the power anymore. We will have the power over the interface. And I saw in some of your work and some of your presentations quite interesting facts, like how many minutes a normal person spends on the internet, you know, doing whatever, online accounting, and that would totally change. I think it already changed. I think it said something about 11 minutes, but only with stuff that's not so nice. And I think I have a really bad life because I have to spend way more every day doing that. So I don't mind it so much. I invited you this week because it's the online week of Cannes Lions, you know, very important award week for a lot of media agencies and advertisement agencies and product design agencies, and it's the very first time that I know about that it's virtual, and also it's the start of the Munich Creative Business Week, and which is also virtual and not in Munich. So I'm pretty sure that usually we would have participated in both of them, and so I decided to celebrate this week, you know, online, watching a lot of keynote speakers, but also with you. What are your? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you're working on. What are your major predictions for the future? And I know it's such a tough question, and every single time people are like, "Oh my God, you know, I need to think." But I mean, clearly, what are your as you know, as an end to this super nice talk? What do you think? Besides from a change in traveling, besides from change of flying and going through the world, what else do you foresee?
Well, there's this saying, and you're familiar with it: never let a crisis go to waste. Use a crisis as an opportunity. And when Rico and I were in the process of you know, getting on board with BRANDLAB, and then the crisis hit in Germany, we also had like this moment of, holy fuck, what are we going to do now? But I believe that in order not only to survive, but to thrive, every brand right now has to rethink both the inner workings of how does work function, how can you be an employer brand, what are you working on, and how do you make that, how do you tell that story, and how do you make it tangible to audiences that are really, really relevant to you. So from that perspective, I think we're going to have a lot of work, not only us, but all our colleagues in the creative industries. Right now, it's the time for designers, for creatives of all different fields, because we have the tools, we have the unconventional thinking to really question things, and not only to pose questions, but also to offer up glimpses of a positive future. And I'm absolutely convinced that this kind of a wake-up call that we're experiencing right now will have, in hindsight, create some really amazing paradigm shifts into creating a better world for us. I firmly believe that.
I totally agree, and you can already see that with the kind of competitions that are out there and the kind of call for entries, you know, for product designers, for architects, for brand designers, you know, to just rethink, as you said, brand values and the stories behind it, and also, you know, what are your own values that you want to bring to the company. So I think that's super important. Rico, what is your opinion?
Well, I think we can without saying any names or naming any clients, we can already see today in the projects that are running or that are in the pipeline, that they are kind of changing perspectives through this whole pandemic situation, and that some of the solutions we have to deliver are redefined at the moment, and that we need to think, okay, how does this pandemic have an effect on analog, digital, and spatial brand experience, especially, of course, the spatial brand experience. When you think about office environments, how does this change in the future, and what do we need to consider now, since we know the effects of the pandemic, and all of this is now going into our projects, into, like I said, into projects that are already running or that are up in the pipeline. And this is, I think, yeah, like Nick said, never let a crisis go to waste. So it will create a new spin. It will create new knowledge that we take into the future. And I think this is important, and it already started 8 weeks ago.
Well, I cannot tell you how much I'm looking forward to the work that you're doing together, and I really hope that we can do a project together in the future. Because, you know, I think that we all inspire each other, and it's really important to keep that network up and talk and to see where we're going. And so I hope to see you here again, of course, and let's just see how we feel in a few weeks and a few months from now and what has changed. I thank you so much for participating. Please say hello to the crafties again, and stay online so we can discuss what we share with our viewers. Thank you so much to Berlin.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I love your stylish background.
Thank you very much.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.